Good morning, everybody. It is Velva Silver, and I'm excited to bring you, I think this is our 4th edition of the hashtag Wisdom Weaver Wednesday. So I'm excited about today's guest. It's Meagan Fettes. She will be coming on here, and we're going to have some real and raw, honest conversations about life. We're going to talk about, life as mothers, life as women, and just sort of, weaving wisdom through life, through those different aspects, through the different avenues, and through the experience. I was really, inclined to actually inspired by, just listening and making my way through life, that I feel like a lot of us need some authentic conversation and, something that can also give you the tools to help you through life at this moment in time. I've had some amazing guests, and I'm just going to bring Meagan on here. And, okay, I'm just bringing people on here with Meagan. Okay. So, I've had Jordan Guilford, I had Tracy. Oh, here's Meagan. Okay. So I'm just going to bring you on here, Meagan. Oh, hi, Connie. Hi, Cheryl. It's nice that you guys are joining. I am just going to bring you on, Meagan. There you go. Okay, she's joining us currently. Hi, Lorelei. There you are.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really good.
Well, thank you for joining me here today on hashtag Wisdom Weaver Wednesday.
Yeah, I'm excited. I love diving into the raw and real conversations.
I know, and that's what we're going to do. So before we begin, I'm going to say that I met you. It's been a long time since I met you, and I think we met through mutual friends. You actually came out to the retreat center when I met you, and that was years ago. I still remember you coming out there and, connecting with you and your essence and your beauty and just your soul. You're just such an amazing soul. So why don't you share a little bit about yourself?
Funny, I always find that question so challenging because there's so many multitudes and aspects I find to be able to answer that. But yeah, it's been so many years. I think I was pregnant with Jace, actually.
You were.
Yeah. So gosh, that's 5 years ago now. Yeah, so I'm a mom of 2 crazy boys. They're wild and fun. Married to the man that I started dating when I was 17 years old. And I'm a yoga instructor. I actually facilitate yoga teacher trainings and do business strategization for conscious entrepreneurs. So yoga instructors, healers, and spiritual coaches.
Well, and you are, I want to add to that, I would say you're probably one of the strongest women that I know, using your strength to move through things and really, use your inspiration to help, lift others up. And that's why I wanted to have you on here, because I feel like, as I sit back and I watch you, I learn a lot from watching you, and I'm grateful for, what you bring to this world and, the purity of heart and the purity of mind and spirit. So,
thank you. That means a lot to me. Thank you.
Truly, truly. So, okay, now you've looked over the questions.
Yes.
And we've basically decided that most things are not off topic, right? Are not off the table.
Yeah, totally. It's funny, I was thinking about this morning, and one of my biggest missions right now is to really allow people to be human and be that open book for that allowing, right? Because I feel like so often we've been conditioned or taught to appear a certain way or act a certain way. And now is that time for us to just take all those old conditionings off and allow ourselves to be vulnerably human.
100%. And that's why I wanted to do the hashtag Wisdom Wednesday is because, you know, I was saying this before you came on, that I really feel like people need real, authentic conversation. You know, what's really going on in your life? What did you do to get through that time? You know, what is some wisdom? And that's what we're going to dive into with you today. You know, is the wisdom that you have brought to the surface, you know, from your periods of darkness. And also we're going to have fun questions too, right? Like I'm an Aries, so I like to go all over the place. And so are you ready?
Yes, let's dive in.
Okay. Okay. I love this question. Okay. So what advice would you give to your 20-year-old self now?
Ooh, that is a good one. So the advice I give to my 20-year-old self is to let go of worrying or doing things to try to be accepted.
Mm,
Like when I think about my 20-year-old self, that was a time where I was still into my drug use. I was still into like my substantial alcohol use. And it was all out of that desire to be accepted or to be seen.
mhm,
And now, really looking back at that, I'm like, oh man, if I just could have been able to be with myself and accept myself and create that space of knowing that, yes, I'm weird, I'm different, so is everybody else. Let's just like own that and like let our freak flag fly, as they say, right? Like
mhm,
that would be the best advice I would ever give, is
mhm,
just to let be and honor the
mhm,
self.
mhm. So you touched on something there, and I want to go a little bit deeper on that. So
Yeah.
you talked about, you know, drug use and alcohol use, and this is something I want to talk about right now because I feel like if you don't have the tools to cope with what's going on, whether it's stress or fear, anxiety, whatever it may be, you know, I think that some people may be choosing to go down that route with drug and alcohol. What advice would you give anyone who's choosing to go down that road? What are some tools that they could do um, to dive into feeling safe to feeling?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because ultimately that's what it is, right? Like it's that running from
Yeah.
any of our like pain or sadness. Um, and it's a tough thing because really and truly, like I think I was lucky in the fact that I had such great support before I even went into that aspect of addiction. Whereas I'm finding in my own experience and seeing people now, some people just never had that true stability or support in their life at any point.
Mm-hmm.
And so now they're looking to either gain that stability but don't know how, or they just are completely lost in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, what I found to be the most supportive was to engage in a community. Like for me, how I got out of my drug and alcohol abuse was yoga. And my yoga teacher trainings that I went into were almost similar to that of an AA program. Like we had to go in and like do clearings and talk to people about things that we have done in our past, and very similar to AA. And then I started teaching, but what really changed my experience was I got so involved in the community of
Mm-hmm.
yoga that I knew if I relapsed, it wasn't just letting myself down. I was letting down all of these other individuals that I had supported, that I had taught. And so sometimes it's like connecting to something that's greater than ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
because I find that personal integrity is something that we'll often let go of
Mm-hmm.
in those times of challenge, whereas we will hold ourselves more strongly to other people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love what you just said about integrity because I totally, that's what I see too. And, you know, when I've gone through my challenging times, where I tend to go is internally, right? It's like I shut everything external out and then I go inside and I listen to what's really going on. You know, what is this trigger? You know, is it, you know, from a certain person? Usually it's something I need to look at within my life, right? And so my new go-to now is, you know, I get the crystals, put them in my bra, you know, put them wherever I need to, go into meditation, you know, run on the treadmill, do what I have to do, but it's going internally versus, you know, what you're saying is, the external connection sometimes isn't healthy if you don't have that internal connection.
Totally. And it's interesting, like I find, I used to struggle with this. So like in yoga, we talk about the 8 limbs of yoga, which was kind of this teachings of how to get to the balance of the mind and the body and the union of the soul. And I remember struggling with the first 2 of the 8 limbs forever, because the first limb is like the yamas, which is external observation. And then the second aspect is the niyamas, which is the internal observation. And I always thought that we needed to do the same, like go internal first and then external. But I've learned over the years in just my own journey that we almost had to I had to create that external awareness of what I was doing, how I was connecting with people. And then once I was there, I was able to go internally a little bit more easily. And I think often is where people struggle, because I know, for example, I've had a lot of friends who've been going through addiction right now as well. And they struggle because everyone says, well, you need to be okay with being with yourself. But when you've disconnected substantially from yourself for so long, that seems overwhelming. It seems so challenging. And so I encourage, sit with people that you love, that you trust, and hear how they're seeing you or what their experience is in this with you from a loving space, right? Like, obviously we don't want to take on those judgments that other people have, but listening from that full perspective. And then from there, allowing yourself to start going within.
Well, and I find so many people are even afraid to have that conversation. They're afraid to be vulnerable, right? So it's easy to keep that shield up so that you don't have to be vulnerable with another person, which I think is a big opportunity for growth right now, is to be vulnerable, right? It's just so key.
It is. And I know in my own experience, right? There's been so many times where I've wanted to hide, or I've wanted to just put that barrier up or that block up. And I mean, I won't say that I haven't, right? In some of my darkest times, I've had to do that in order to just find where I am again, find my center after going through something massive. But what I have found is in that space of vulnerability, that's really where the deep, true connections come in. And so that's what I always remind myself is, do I want to live on the surface and maybe I have a lot of connections, but they're all inauthentic? Or do I want to have a few connections and have them true quality, deep relationships?
Right. And I like that too, that it's quality over quantity, right? Which is kind of my motto and everything. Okay, no, thank you for answering that. The next question that I have, I'm going to skip over, I'm going to lighten it up, and then I'm going to go deep, okay? So let's do something light here. At what age did you fall in love, and who was that with?
Oh, so you know what? I actually I fell fast and hard for my husband. And I would say, I was a fast faller all the time. I really only had one other serious boyfriend before my husband, which I would say at that time I loved, but then I met my husband and it was we hadn't even gone on our first date. It actually started off as a one-night stand. And I totally fell head over heels. I think I actually got drunk one night and called him and told him I loved him. And oh my goodness, all my girlfriends were like, what are you doing? Do that, he's gonna run. And yeah, I think I was fast over him within 48 hours.
Wow. Well, the one thing that we do know is that, those of us, I think, that are gypsy souls, which kind of you and I are, it's we don't really follow the normal templates or the normal timelines. It's just when you dive in with your heart and you go with the flow, I mean, why not, right? Life is short. YOLO is my theme.
That's just it. And I mean, I think we learn, right? Yes, we might get hurt, and the process of getting hurt is going to be shitty. However, I'd also rather get hurt than not experience the depth of like the fun and the excitement and the love that could be on the other side.
I know I did a blog a while back and it said I'd rather be hurt than feel nothing at all, right? It's so many people are afraid to feel, right? And as we're all waking up and people are starting to feel, I feel like they're looking around trying to sort of navigate through the system of, okay, I'm alive again. I actually feel my sensory overload is open. And you know, so many times, like we were just talking about with addiction, is sometimes when we feel too much, we do want to shut it all down, whether that be any type of addiction, right? And, you know, what I've learned being a spiritual person and feeling so much is that I always have to have tools sort of in place to sort of move the excess energy per se or feelings out of my body so that I feel it, but I move through it, right? It's not a period of sitting and culminating or ruminating, as we would say about cattle, you know, over and over again, right? It's about feeling it, but moving through the process, moving through the cycle of death and rebirth.
Yeah, I often say like it's like the duality, right? We can't experience
Yes.
the happiness without experiencing the full depths of like that pain and sorrow and sadness.
Yeah.
And no emotion is bad. It's whether we choose to get stuck in it that becomes the challenge. So I love that because it's, yeah. So
Okay. So now we're going to go to the taboo section for a moment. So when did you last cry and what was it about?
so funny that you're asking me this because I literally was thinking about this for the last half hour. Actually, so I cry all the time, but my like last really big cry, I was watching a TV show and they had a topic about miscarriages. And I had 3 miscarriages in my past before I had my kids. And it's funny, like at the time when I was watching the show, I thought that I had dealt with it. But as they were talking about it, it was just like that really deep, like ball of a cry that was just coming out and couldn't stop. Like it was like, I just, no matter what I did, I couldn't stop that cry because it was obviously needed. And I realized in that, like, when I look back at the experiences that I had with the miscarriages, it was kind of like oh, well, people go through this. Let's just get over it and move forward. I had never actually allowed myself to acknowledge my own feelings.
So would you say that there was a theme there, not only with the miscarriage, but with other things in your life where you observed, but you didn't necessarily, didn't allow?
Absolutely. You know, it's one of those, like, I often say, so my consciousness, I can see things from many different angles, as I think we all can, right? And which is a great thing. It's like a superpower, but it's also my biggest kryptonite because I can see all these things and then I rationalize it. And then I diminish those feelings because I'm like, oh, well, everybody that I've talked to has gone through something similar. So why am I feeling upset about this? Instead of slowing down and just saying, you know what, how do I feel about this? Like, I mean, my first miscarriage was when I was 21 and most people, like, I never thought I wanted kids. And then I remember getting pregnant and being so excited, like felt like I was on the right path. This was my calling. And then, I mean, I miscarried at 8 weeks, but it was devastating. And I never allowed myself to be in that because I was 21 and I still had so much life to live. I've got so much time, you know, all of those stories that I told myself. And now, like, I feel right now personally, I'm in this really big evolution where a lot of things that I've stuffed are starting to come up to the surface because I can't move forward with those anymore. And I think a lot of the collective is feeling the same way, right? Like there's probably a lot of emotions coming up because we're not meant to be carrying them with us into the new world or whatever it is that we're moving into. And so now it's that rationalization still comes up, but I'm choosing to feel it. I'm giving myself permission to feel it.
And you know, that is exactly what I feel is going on right now, is we're being given the invitation to feel over and over and over again, right? And, you know, I talk about the charge, right? When you talk about duality, it's like, do you have a positive charge or a negative charge? Or can you actually just sit in neutrality in this space and just be, right? And that's kind of been my motto in life, is when I feel a charge either way, I know there's work that needs to be done, right? And it doesn't mean that I don't have a strong belief in something, but what it means for me is that I can truly, I want to get to the space where I don't feel the negative or positive charge, that it's just neutral.
Yeah. And you know, it's funny, like that's ultimately like the true nature, true goal in yoga, right? We call it Sattvik, where we can be bothered, I want to say, from either side of the emotions. Like we can experience them, we can feel them, but it doesn't take us out one way or another. And I think, to be honest, like I know for myself, there was a lot of aspects of like the sadness and the fear that I felt that I was scared to experience, because I was taught that like if you're feeling those emotions, you need to go hide, like go deal with them somewhere else. Or it was just like bad or wrong to feel those things. Like even I think like the whole positive thought we're teaching, like it's something I really don't love being taught, because I think we're kind of dissociating again from those quote unquote negative emotions. And really, like I say, I think so many people, including myself, don't want to go into those depths of darkness out of fear of, will I ever come out? Will it break me? Will I get stuck there? And you know, it's funny, like for myself, because I've been diving into that space a little bit more so because out of need, right? Like I feel like I'm finally at the space where I need to. When I surrender to that space, everything else becomes easy. Everything else just naturally changes.
That because you're in the flow, right? And you're just fluid. And it's like when you have the courage to feel and be in that space, it just allows everyone else to do the same thing, right? And I feel like that's why we need to do this. So I want to go to that spot with you. So many people listening or watching maybe don't know this about you, but you just had a very, you know, major crises, right, in your life and your family. And you know how I've been observing you from the outside, Meagan, is it makes me want to cry, right? Like I just see that you've had this strength to rise above, and just your perception and what I hear you've gained from it has been incredible. So do you want to talk a little bit about what happened and what have you gained, you know, through that time? What has been the positive aspect?
Yeah. So yeah, back in September, we had a house fire, and it, you know, looking back at it, it's crazy. Like I still, like I have moments of like disbelief or probably desire to dissociate from it. But basically what had happened, and we were down at the barn, we were doing a controlled burn for our yard cleanup, and it was a beautiful day. Kids were playing in all the manure around the field. And we decided to come back up to the house to get ready. It was a Sunday, so the kids needed to get ready for school. And like I say, they were covered in manure. So Brett went back down to go check on our controlled burn and had started a pot of oil for chicken wings. And we don't, like, I didn't hear him. He said he told me it was there, but I didn't hear him. And I was busy getting the kids bathed and ready to go to bed and have dinner and all that stuff. And I heard something, and I came into the kitchen later, like, so I'll go back. I heard something and I didn't really think anything of it at the beginning. because we had like the perfect storm going on. I had every window, every door open in the house. It was a beautiful day. And then it got louder and I went into the kitchen, and at this point, our kitchen was up in flames. And, you know, I've been sitting with this actually because I'm moving through, or letting myself sit with and move through the guilt, because my reaction in that moment, seeing those flames, was so different than what I thought I would do, to be honest. I remember just like getting stuck in this thought loop of like, what do I do? What do I do? I know I can't put water on it. I know I can't smother it because I couldn't turn the heat source off. And I was stuck in this thought loop. And then I just started screaming. And my kids came out of the tub. They're in the tub. The boys came out, and Danon saw the fire. And so I kind of like came to, and that's where the guilt comes in, because I'm like, I didn't even think about getting them out first. I was just stuck in this loop of what to do. And so they had come out of the tub, and so I got them outside, and then went on to grab the pot, thinking if I could get it outside, I could get the rest of the fire out. And I ended up slipping and getting burnt all down my right side, from just underneath my cheek all the way to the tips of my right toes. And it was challenging. I mean, at that time, I didn't like associate to myself being injured. Like, I was so focused on making sure the house was okay and everyone else was okay. And then they took, like, I remember getting into the ambulance and getting into like so much shock that they actually had to give me a ton of drugs because they couldn't manage the pain. And we went into South Health campus, they wrapped me up, and then they sent me home. And they just told me, like, they told me a few things to watch out for, like, oh, well, if the burn wraps around your arm and your hand starts to lose circulation, then you want to go in and get checked out. Oh, if this happens, then you want to go get checked out. And so we had gone back home. Brett and I slept in the house that night. And I woke up and I was soaked. I was covered in hair because I was burnt everywhere. And I was soaked because the burns were leaking out everywhere. And my right hand was like this big. It was huge. And the burn unit at the Foothills called me. And so we went in, and the surgeon right away was like, oh my gosh, like, you need to be admitted. You have so many burns. They were like, they don't even do the degrees anymore. They do partial and full thickness. And so the majority of my burns were full thickness, which would be equivalent to like a 3rd or 4th degree burn. And so I said, like, because I hadn't seen my kids, I was like really in the space of guilt. And I just said, like, can I like choose if I get admitted or not? He said yes. And then we had like another family crisis actually that next day that led to me choosing to just be an outpatient and go in and out every single day so I could be there and present with my kids. And it was tough. Like, I mean, like, the first few weeks were dark. I went into panic attacks. I spent no time really sleeping. I spent all night, in the middle of the night, just bawling and crying, and like going over the event over and over and thinking about what I could have done, right? Those natural emotional reactions. And it's funny though, and I know I told you this yesterday when we saw each other, when I slipped in the oil, everything had like just stopped. It was like that slow motion when life just stops. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, I'm gonna die. Like, and I kept thinking about the kids. I didn't know when Brett was gonna be back to help me out getting the fire out. And I heard a voice say, you know what, you've been dying for too long. Now is your opportunity to live. And after those first initial 2 weeks of like being in those really dark places, I remember like being up and walking around, because they kept telling me like the more movement you can create, ideally the more mobility you'll have moving forward. And so I was up trying to walk and move my joints and do everything, and I saw a picture of my kids, and just something sunk in, where it was like this fire was relit in me. And honestly, it was like, okay, I have 2 choices here. I have a choice to allow myself to get consumed by the poor me, like this sucks, this is shitty, or I have the choice to utilize this as an opportunity to do something different moving forward. And so that's what I did. And I'm lucky. I mean, I had my mom really force me to be still, to focus on my physical healing. And it was that thought process of like long-term or short-term pain for long-term gain. I had this amazing support from my community that helped us out. And honestly, it was very overwhelming. Like it actually brought a lot of anxiety to me because I don't receive well, but I honestly know that without that support, I probably wouldn't have continued to maintain that mindset and that resiliency within myself. Like it was something that was created within me, but then also supported by those around me.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for sharing so deeply and authentically, because I'm sure it's not easy for you to even go back and, tell this story. But I feel like in watching you, Meagan, like watching how you move through it and your awareness is something that we all can learn from, like that pivotal moment where you said, you're dying, now you need to start living, right? And it's that moment that you chose to, rise above and make a change, where you could have chose, many other different routes, which wouldn't be as positive as they are now. Like, it's inspiring, what you've seen and sort of connected with inside yourself during that time. So truly, thank you for sharing with all of us.
Well, thank you. And, it's one of those things, like I would love to say that the journey, and I think this is one of my biggest lessons has been like, we often think, oh, well, once we go on that like growth journey, it's like straight uphill from here. Like we're going to be doing it. It's going to be amazing. And it's not, right? Like we're always being met with those pivotal points of, am I going to keep walking this path and growing, or am I going to take that path that seems a little bit easier? And it's really important to acknowledge like neither is less challenging, right? Neither path is less challenging, but it's what are we sacrificing in which path? Like, and that's always been my mindset in this is, am I willing to sacrifice myself, my family anymore? Or am I going to sacrifice like something else?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I'd way rather sacrifice, say, for example, success in my business so that I can be honoring myself and my family in my true, authentic form. And I really do think every day it's that choice, right? Like we wake up and it's like, okay, what am I choosing today? Am I going to choose myself and my high values, or am I going to choose this carrot over here?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So in that moment, so I'm going to kind of go back internally. What do you feel? This is for everyone listening, because I know other people have gone through, and some on here are going through health crises right now. What do you feel pulled you up and out to the point where you made the choice for your highest good? What connection was that?
Yeah, that's a good question. To be honest,
Mm-hmm.
it is, I don't even know what the connection really was. There was just like a really deep-seated knowing.
Okay.
Like, honestly, Brett and I talk about it all the time about how like those 2 days of trauma were really, really shitty. I mean, like we're still healing from it and working through it as individuals and as a family. But we both know that that exact event, those 2 days, were exactly what we needed as well. Like we can look back at where we were the last 2 years as individuals and as a couple and as a family and recognize that we really were all running from our own pain points, our own experiences that we didn't want to deal with. And we were forced to stop. Like It's like the universe was like, hey, you can't run anymore. Like, you need to sit down and listen. And I mean, I was forced to completely stop. Like, I couldn't hardly move. I couldn't walk hardly. I was forced to sit there and be within myself. And I cried a lot. Like I say, I think I spent probably 4 months crying every single night, and big releases. Like, and they were crying, some were crying about the event itself. Some were crying about like stuff from my childhood. Like, it was just all over the place, but it was because I was forced to sit and be with myself. So that's probably more that connection, is just to stop, right? Instead of trying to run or make ourselves busy or tell ourselves the story that we need to be doing all these things. The only thing we really need to be doing is connecting within.
So powerful, right? You're right. Like, I love the analogy of, running. And I often say that, that I remember sitting in physio one time, and she had something on the wall, and it just said, either start moving your body or your body will make you, take time to heal. And I'm a firm believer in that too, having my own health crises in the past, right? Whereas if we're not listening, the universe will give you that smack up the side of the head sometimes. And, you're intuitive also. And then it hits and you're like, how did I miss this? Like, and that's the other thing I want to say is, being intuitive and how I missed that. And then I was forced to sit in CCU for a week and be still, just like what you're saying is, I think, well, we were already doing the work. Did this happen because there's something larger, and we needed that longer pause to integrate and to sort of stabilize what's coming. What are your thoughts on that?
I definitely do believe that. Like I say, I know that in the past, before the fire, I was very intuitive. After my grandma passed away, I wouldn't say that I was definitely in alignment with who I was meant to be, but I also believe that every part of that happened because, for example, my grandma passing away, I built my foundation of self based on her presence. And so I needed to lose her in order to realize that I needed to build a foundation within myself. And going through the fire, I was forced to sit and be still and experience and feel all of these emotions that I know I can't carry with me for whatever's coming moving forward. Because I feel that a lot of us in the collective are meant to be those pillars, right? To be able to hold the space that are rising up into their own awakening. And we can't do that unless we're those clear channels, unless we allow ourselves to really be still and learn to be in that space of ourselves.
Yeah, I totally agree with you about being that clear channel, right? And I feel like that's the greatest gift I think we can give ourselves, on this planet Earth, is to be that channel, to really let go of what no longer serves. But it's a complex process, right? It's just the whole death and rebirth. You've got the grief chart or the grief cycle, which has a U-turn. So it's like you say, it's not like a straight arrow where you're like, hey, this is plan A, I'm going to get to the end. There's all the little twists and turns in between, I think, that really make us, dig deep inside and look at, what choice am I going to make here? You always have two choices or more, right? But it's that internal connection that guides you and gives you that strength internally, whoever that may be, whether it's God or Buddha or Allah, whoever it is. It's that source that really anchors you in to trusting something bigger than yourself.
Totally. And I had this thought this morning about like when we're out of alignment, and about how, like, why does the universe like show up in the way that it does? And it's funny, like I often say that we're all here by design. Like, we are like all workings of a perfect design system. And so when for example, if we weren't here, then the system would be out of whack. And so I was thinking about it this morning around, like, when we're out of alignment, in yoga, we say like the universe exists within you, the universe exists within me, it exists within all. So when we're out of alignment, it's like the universe is out of alignment, and it does whatever it needs to course correct itself because it can't function in that space for too long. And I really feel like this experience we're having right now globally is that hard course redirect by the universe of like, dudes, you guys have gotten so far out of alignment that we need to like come back to ourselves. And when we allow that to happen, everything else is going to shift because the system is actually going to begin working again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, I love how you use the term course correction, because that is what it is. Like, that's what I'm saying about your perception, right? It's like your perception can either be global and expanded, right? Or not, right? Depends where you are on that learning curve, right? And that's why I wanted to do this whole thing on Wednesday, is to have people that have that expanded perception so that you can share, you know, what is it that what are the gifts that you are, you know, extracting from those periods of darkness, right? Because we're human. We need to acknowledge the fact that we have to have the good days and the bad days, right? It's not all, you know, roses and daisies all along.
Yeah, it's true. And you know, it's funny. I often say that, well, yeah, like our biggest moments, like the biggest changes in our lives usually happen from those dark periods, right? But yet we hide from them, or we try to avoid what we actually experienced instead of acknowledging and celebrating the opportunity that we were given for growth. Doesn't mean that we can't feel like the frustration and the sadness and everything else that's involved in it. But I really feel that instead of celebrating everybody's successes, let's acknowledge successes and celebrate the dark aspects that have happened and what they've chosen out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I love that part about the dark spaces, because that is where you know, the light cracks open. You know, if you didn't have any cracks, it's like we're saying, if you don't love deeply and you don't take the opportunity to feel, you're not really living, right? My whole thing is, I always say, you know, being on the deathbed and laying there, it's like, I don't want to have regrets. I don't want to lay there and think, oh, I wish I would have been to Bora Bora. I wish I would have, you know, hiked Machu Picchu. I don't want to have any of those moments of, I wish I would have. I want to really be able to say, you know, there's so many treasures that I have from every experience that I have had, right? So, no, go ahead.
It's like that idea of like, would you regret anything that you experienced in your life, right? Like, why would we ever even think of that regret though too? Because it's like everything that we experience is perfect. Yes, we still need to choose to live, and we need to choose to do all those things that we want to and feel those soul pulls and go into that alignment. But then acknowledging like there's no space for regret because everything is going to be exactly as it needs to be.
Okay, perfect. So another question that I have for you is, what do you still have left on your bucket list? Why don't you share 2 things that you have on your bucket list for this lifetime?
Yeah, so one is to take a year and go traveling with my family. And it's something I want to do actually when they're fairly young still, like my boys, because I want to go and teach them about the world and just life and get them to experience different cultures and different countries. And that's one big thing. Like I knew that that was something I wanted to do when I first got pregnant with Dana, and my oldest, was to go and do that. And then another one is to go skydiving.
Yep.
Like, and it's, you know, I always said when I was younger that, and it's funny that this was something I said when I was quite young, but every fear that I had, I was going to move through. So I had a fear of drowning. I became a certified diver. I have a huge fear of heights, so I've always wanted to go skydiving. So that's something that is definitely still on my bucket list.
Well, I'll do it with you, because That is on my bucket list. My brother, I think he's done it, and he said to me, "You know what? I'll do it with you." And I totally want to skydive. I agree with you. It's like I know I'll be on the edge thinking, "Oh my God, what am I doing?" But at the same time, why not?
Well, that's just it. Like, I mean, and everyone I've talked to says afterwards, like the view, the feeling, everything, there's no description for how
Mhm.
incredible it is.
Mhm.
And like even talking about it, I get like the
I
spirit
know.
bumps. So I'm like, okay, let's do it. We should plan it.
Yeah, I know. I think I might try the iFly, the simulator that they have by Deerfoot Mall. I think I might try that first. But
Mhm.
oh,
Yeah.
Jadine goes, it's an incredible experience. Oh, she's done it.
Oh man, I didn't know that about you, Jadine. You're gonna have to, let me guess, you did it in Australia, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now this is another one that I want to ask here because I feel like we're going to go everywhere. Okay. We did the bucket list. Okay. What do you like most about your appearance?
Most about my appearance?
Uh-huh.
Mm. That's a tough one. Okay, so I'll be like totally authentic and real here.
Yeah.
I have struggled with my appearance
Mm.
a lot. Um, but I would say that my favorite part of my appearance is my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I love my eyes. Um, it's something that like I find I'm constantly working on. Like I feel that I'll take like 5 steps forward and be like, okay, yes, I love myself. I feel like really good in my own skin. And then I'll take like 10 steps back and be like, what the hell? Who is that in the mirror?
Well, and I ask that question because I find as women, and I'm sure men are the same, that there's so, when you have babies and then as we're aging, it's like this, like we're talking about at the beginning, where you think life is going to be that straight arrow up. It's like it's up and down, right? And it's the tools of, okay, so today I'm not really feeling that good about loving myself. What am I going to do? So, what are some things that you do when you're feeling that you could strengthen your connection to loving yourself more?
Mm. There's a couple of different things that I do. One is I do a lot of mirror play.
Mm.
Um, I love, well, I won't say that I love it because I resisted a lot at the beginning, but I love the results of it. Is I'll stand in front, like I have a full length mirror in our bedroom, and my boys even call it the magic mirror
Mm.
because I make them do it as well. But I'll stand and I'll look at myself and tell myself that I love myself. Or if there's like a certain part of my body that I'm really disconnected from, I'll speak to that part specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the other thing I found is like allowing myself to take care of myself. Um, and then something I'll do is I'll often like not wear makeup, or I'll just kind of like dress frumpy, and then I'm kind of like living and sitting in this space of not feeling great about myself because I'm not
Mm-hmm.
taking care of myself. And so when I notice that, I'll put makeup on, I'll dress in clothes that like I feel good in, and eating really good and nutritious foods on those days as well. I find like bringing in that nourishment on all levels. So seeing myself, feeding myself, clothing myself, like just loving in every manner that I possibly can.
Mm-hmm. I love that because, you and I both know that energy is a vibration that is, always there, right? And I love how you put it all together because it's true. It's not just how we adorn the physical temple, but it's moving it, and nourishing it with foods and water and nature, and really connecting with all of that to bring your vibration up, because I always say it's an internal job, right? It's like you got to feel good from the inside out, right?
It's so true. And I remember when I was facilitating yoga teacher trainings like in the studio, and I would put out like 40 hours in a weekend.
Mm.
And so like the next day I'd wake up and I'd go and teach my 6 a.m. class back in the day, and then I'd come home and I'd be exhausted. And what I first started doing was I like would try and sleep that whole day, and then I realized like, well, that's not really giving me any more energy. In fact, it was like creating more guilt and shame because I was missing out on time with my kids. And so I started to really lean into, okay, on those days, what is it that I really want? What is it that my soul needs? So I would get into like a really great nourishing yoga practice so I could move my body. I'd drink a lot of water. I would eat like delicious foods. Usually I'd go to like Little Fast or Fresh or like somewhere that I knew had amazing food so that they could nourish me. And if I had time, I like often go or get my feet done, like go get a pedicure or something that was nourishing me in a different way than what I normally would. And what I found in that was the energy was so much stronger than if I had slept for 8 hours.
Yes. I mean, that just makes me beam from the inside out because, you know, I remember doing that back in the day, even when the girls were small, I would just crave sleep and I would think, I just need to sleep. But then I would usually go down, and at that time I was doing Charlene Prickett step aerobics. That dates myself, but I would go down and I would work out and I felt so much better because I'd moved the energy inside my body rather than just laying down and sleeping like we used to do as teenagers, right? You know, allowing that process. So yeah. And I love the fact that you said, you know, how many times do we feel guilty for getting a pedicure, or, you know, like you said, going to Little Fast and Fresh and having someone else cook something for us, you know, letting go of the guilt that it's okay, because you brought it up at the beginning. And that's why I'm bringing it up now, where you said it was really hard to receive from the community, right?
Oh, yes.
So it's like the universe presented you with this massive wide scale receiving, you know, versus, you know, something small. So do you feel that you've kind of opened yourself up to a deeper level now of receiving?
Yes and no. So yes, in the fact that like I truly like I saw how powerful it was when I allowed that receiving. Like it was receiving on so many different levels. I mean, I received on a physical level where I had people supporting me so that I could just be still and heal. Like my mom, my dad, my sister-in-laws, they all helped me with the boys, and Brett, when he was present, was able to do that as well. And then I had like the emotional support, and I had like financial support, and then I had like a lot of spiritual support. I mean, I had people messaging me that I never had met before saying they were praying for me. Their whole church was praying for me. And like friends that would say they'd wake up from dreams of working on me and energetically. So I truly believe that that's why I was able to heal physically so fast, was because of all of that support. However, I think for me, I find the receiving on, it's the conditions. Like I feel like I'm okay to receive the energy and that support, or the physical support. Financial support really gives me anxiety. Really still like is something I'm working on, even though I know how beneficial it is, and I know that I would give freely to somebody in that situation myself. There's still a little bit of a block. But it's funny because I know that was one of my big lessons in that whole event, was the ability and the willingness to receive.
Which I think is key, because I think many times we're good at giving, right? We're really strong with that masculine, you know, it feels good to give, but does it feel as good to receive? Or like you say, it's the anxiety of, you know, am I worthy to receive? You know, what are the conditions that maybe have been connected to receiving from childhood, right? And you really get to observe, you know, the fluidity of receiving, because I would say the majority of the human collective is not good at receiving. And that is with this, you know, pandemic, is kind of what's going on. It's like, are you good at receiving, or what is really going on internally? Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because I find with the receiving, like I've really been working to stand in it, like, and be in that uncomfortable space with it. So even though it brings up a lot of anxiety, instead of like before, I'd always dismiss it. Like, nope, I'm good. Like, don't, thank you though. Whereas now I'm like, okay, no, I'm going to sit in it. I'm going to allow it, as uncomfortable as it makes me feel. And what I've really been observing is that like this ego base where I'm like, oh, am I deserving? Or my fear of like taking advantage of other individuals. But what I've learned in that observing is when I don't allow myself to receive, it's like I'm diminishing the other person's opportunity to give. Right? So I'm kind of taking advantage in a different way than what my fear is. It's like that self-fulfilling prophecy almost. Like I'm fearing of taking advantage of somebody, but by not receiving, I'm actually doing that in a different way.
100%, right? 100%. I mean, and especially as women, we tend to do that. Like we're good. We're super women, right? We can do whatever we need to do, right? And it's like, but then when it comes time to sitting and receiving, it's like, yeah, I'm not so good at this, right? And it's true. It's like you say, it allows someone else to feel good in giving, right? We have to take turns in receiving and giving. We can't always be the giver, or, eventually the physical body gives us a big wake-up call, right?
Yeah, it's so true. And that's where I find that balance is really coming in, right? And that, like, because we often talk about the balance of the giving and the receiving, the masculine and the feminine. And it's really that acknowledgement of, okay, if I am always giving, then I'm creating that lack of balance for not just myself, but for everybody else too in my community. So what can I do to surrender?
Truth on that. Okay, so we're almost at the end of our time. So what I want to do, can you share a little bit about what you've created, where people can find you, and what's coming up for you?
Yeah, totally. So what I've created is, actually it's funny because I'm in the process of like creating something new right now called the Filament method, with everything that's been going on about how to really hone in on the listening, like listening to ourselves, really honoring that space and how to create that space so that you can begin to fill your soul and create your energy from that space. And then I also have like my online yoga teacher trainings, which is actually super cool. I was the one that never thought I'd bring a yoga teacher training online, but with everything going on, it's like, what else? What other space can I create? And so it's been really, really neat in that place as well. And then of course, like this business strategy support for holistic entrepreneurs. But the best place to find me, because really and truly, like I've been in this space of remodeling my business and my focus since the fire. There was a big wake up call with that as well, of like where I had designed my business wasn't really supportive to having me take time away to heal. And so I've been in that process of remodeling and really checking in with what's of value, what's not, what can I release, what do I want to focus on. And so the easiest way for anybody to find any of these is my Facebook page, to be honest. And that's the Rise Entrepreneur Center.
Okay, perfect. So I am excited to see the remodeling that you are bringing forward and putting it all together, because I just know you, and watching you, that you're going to have a whole different perception, that it will be more elevated than it was before. So I'm going to watch. I'm watching, and I'm excited. I'm beside you, cheering you on. And truly, I want to thank you for being here and sharing so openly and vulnerably with all of us. And, you're an inspiration, Meagan. I love you, and truly thank you.
Well, thank you. And likewise, I mean, I'm very lucky, because I often think like about mentorship, right? And how one of my favorite qualities in mentorship is that vulnerability, and that's something that you have always shown as well. And so been that great, empowering and inspiring lead. So thank you.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure. So I want to just thank everybody who has joined us here on hashtag Wisdom Weaver Wednesday. And I will be here next Wednesday with Dwayne Clausen. So once again, you can find Meagan and on Facebook, and it's the Rise. What is it called? The Rise
Entrepreneur Center.
Right. Okay. So go ahead and find her on there and watch what she's doing. I promise you that she is going to bring new inspiration and, you know, lots of lessons for all of us to learn from her during her challenging times. So thank you, Meagan. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.